Have you ever felt like someone was pulling invisible strings in your life? Like you were being quietly controlled, emotionally hijacked, or guilt-tripped into doing things that didn't align with who you are? What if I told you there's an ancient code, written by philosophers who lived over 2,000 years ago, that can make you immune to that kind of manipulation? This video isn't about being cold or heartless. It's about becoming so grounded, so inwardly strong, that no one can shake your mind. Not a toxic partner, not a controlling boss, not society itself. Because here's the truth, you can't be manipulated if you control your emotions, your reactions, and your perception of reality. And that's exactly what the Stoics mastered. But before we dive into the 6 habits that make you impossible to manipulate, I want you to picture this: a Roman emperor, the most powerful man on earth, sitting alone in his tent during war, writing quietly to himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That was Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king. Even with absolute authority, he knew the real battle wasn't with enemies or armies, it was within his own mind. The same battle you and I face every day when someone tries to control our emotions, twist our decisions, or make us doubt ourselves. But here's the shocking part. Manipulation doesn't always come from other people. Sometimes it's the voice in your own head that manipulates you. The fear of rejection, the need to please, the craving for approval, those are the puppeteers that keep you dancing to someone else's tune. The Stoics knew this centuries ago. They practiced habits that stripped away those strings, leaving only clarity, calm, and unshakable confidence. In this video, we're going to uncover those 6 habits, one by one, but not as dry philosophy. You'll see how they show up in your daily life, how modern society exploits your emotions, and how you can turn that manipulation into mastery. By the end, you'll know how to walk into any room, any conversation, any relationship completely unmoved, calm, yet powerful. You'll understand why people who live by these Stoic habits seem untouchable, magnetic, and even mysterious, because they operate from a place most people have never reached. And before we even start, I want you to hold one question in your mind, one that will quietly burn through every story, every example you're about to hear. Who truly controls me, the world or my own mind? Because when you can answer that question honestly, everything changes. The game ends, the manipulation loses its power, and you become the kind of person that even manipulators fear, someone who cannot be moved. So let's open the first door into this forbidden Stoic power. But be warned, once you understand it, you can never go back to the person who used to be easily swayed. Ready? Let's begin with habit number 1, and it's one that Marcus Aurelius himself used to keep absolute power from corrupting his soul. Habit number 1. Emotional detachment, the Stoic shield. Picture this. You're standing in a crowded room, and someone suddenly throws an insult your way. Maybe it's your coworker taking a jab, your partner saying something hurtful, or a stranger online calling you out. Most people would react instantly, defending, arguing, or even exploding. But imagine if in that moment you felt absolutely nothing. Not coldness, not apathy, just complete control. The words hit your ears, but not your mind. You simply observe. That is the essence of Stoic emotional detachment, the ability to separate what happens to you from how you respond to it. Marcus Aurelius called it the art of being unshaken. Seneca described it as the power of remaining free amid chaos. And Epictetus? He said it bluntly, it's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters. The Stoics understood something that modern psychology confirms. Emotions are powerful, but they are terrible masters. When you let anger, fear, or guilt take over, you hand your power to whoever triggered it. They control you because they can control your state. But emotional detachment doesn't mean suppressing feelings. It means observing them without attachment. Think of it like standing on the shore watching waves crash. You don't stop the waves, but you don't drown in them either. Seneca used to train this by imagining loss before it happened. He would think, what if I lose my wealth, my position, my friends?
This practice, called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, made him immune to shock. Because when you've already rehearsed emotional storms in your mind, no storm outside can control you. Here's how it applies today. Every advertisement you see, every influencer post, every breaking news headline, all of it is designed to manipulate emotion, fear, desire, outrage. If they can stir your emotions, they can control your attention. And if they control your attention, they control your choices. That's why emotional detachment is like having a secret shield in a world built on emotional triggers. You stop reacting to every push and pull of society. You stop letting others dictate your mood, and you start living with what the Stoics called apatheia. Not indifference, but peace through mastery. It's how Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire during plagues and wars without losing his calm. It's how you can handle betrayal, criticism, or chaos today without breaking. But here's the twist. Emotional detachment also makes you magnetic. People sense when you're not easily moved, and it draws them in. It feels mysterious, powerful, even a little intimidating. Manipulators, on the other hand, hate it because their weapons don't work on you anymore. You stop being the puppet they can provoke, and they start feeling powerless. That's the first Stoic habit, the invisible armor that no one sees, but everyone feels. And yet, there's a deeper level to this, a mental practice that makes emotional detachment unbreakable. It's something Marcus used before facing betrayal from his closest allies, a mindset shift that will make you immune not just to insults, but to manipulation through praise and approval too. Because not all manipulation comes through conflict. Sometimes it comes through flattery. That's where the next Stoic habit begins, the one that will make you truly unstoppable.
Habit number 2, the indifference to praise and criticism. Freedom from validation. There's a silent form of manipulation that's more dangerous than any insult. It's the manipulation that comes wrapped in a compliment. Think about it. When someone praises you, it feels good, like a warm spotlight on your soul. You crave more of it, right? But the moment you start needing it, you give away your freedom. Because now, your mood, your confidence, your identity, all depend on someone else's opinion. Marcus Aurelius saw through this illusion centuries ago. He wrote in his journal, "If you seek applause, you've already sold yourself to the audience." He wasn't saying you should reject kindness or appreciation. He meant that when you attach your worth to approval, you make yourself manipulatable. People can control you simply by giving or withholding validation. Now picture this. You post something online, maybe a creative project, maybe your opinion, and the likes start pouring in. Dopamine hits. You feel unstoppable. But the next time, when the likes are fewer, your energy drops. You question yourself. That's not just emotion. That's manipulation disguised as self-doubt. Seneca warned about this trap too. He said, "He who seeks to please everyone will please no one." The Stoics practiced indifference, not because they didn't care, but because they refused to let other people's approval define their peace. They lived by a higher standard, virtue, wisdom, and inner judgment. To them, only you know whether your actions are right or wrong. Not the crowd, not your boss, not the algorithm. Epictetus trained his students by having them imagine the worst scenario, being mocked, rejected, or misunderstood, and then asking, "Does that make you less wise?" The answer was always no, because truth doesn't need validation. It just is. Imagine how powerful you'd become if you could live like that today, immune to flattery, untouchable by criticism. The world constantly pulls you with invisible strings of likes, views, followers. The Stoic cuts those strings one by one. When someone praises them, they say thank you, but I was already complete. When someone insults them, they say, "That's your opinion, not my identity." This habit turns you into what modern psychologists call an internal locus of control, someone whose stability comes from within,
not from external feedback. But here's where it gets interesting. Emotional detachment and indifference to praise work together like armor and sword. Detachment protects your emotions. Indifference cuts through manipulation. Together, they create what Marcus Aurelius called a fortress in the soul. Yet even the strongest fortress has a weakness: the mind's tendency to overthink, to be pulled by every thought, every fear, every imagined scenario. That's the next battlefield the Stoics conquered, the world inside the mind. In the next habit, you'll discover how they turn their thoughts into tools of power, and how you can use the same mental discipline to stop manipulation before it even begins. It's not just about resisting others, but mastering yourself.
Habit number 3. Mastering the inner dialogue. Control your thoughts before they control you. Every act of manipulation begins with a thought, not someone else's words, but your interpretation of them. Think about that. The Stoics didn't fear manipulation from others because they understood this single truth. You are not controlled by what happens, but by the story you tell yourself about what happens. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That sentence is not philosophy, it's a sword for the mind. It means the instant someone tries to gaslight you, guilt trip you, or twist your perception, you have a choice. You can either believe the story they plant or rewrite it through reason. Let's step into a real-world moment. Imagine you're in a relationship and your partner says, "If you really cared about me, you'd do this for me." That sounds innocent, but it's emotional blackmail. The moment you believe their story, "Maybe I am selfish if I don't," you lose control. But the Stoic mind pauses. It doesn't react, it questions. Is this true, or is it a projection? This pause is what Seneca called rational delay, the ability to slow down emotion long enough for reason to speak. Epictetus taught his students to literally talk back to their thoughts. When the mind whispered, "They don't like you," he'd respond, "So what? Is that under my control?" This inner dialogue, calm, logical, unshaken, is what separates a Stoic from a slave to impulse. Now imagine this applied to modern life. The media says, "You're not successful unless you have this." Your mind answers, "Define success." Your friend says, "You've changed." Your mind replies, "I'm supposed to." A manipulator says, "No one else will ever understand you." Your mind smiles, "I understand myself. That's enough." When you master your inner dialogue, the outside world loses its power. The Stoics called this proreisis, the rational faculty of choice. It's the one thing that can never be taken from you. Even if you lose everything, money, status, relationships, your ability to choose your thoughts remains. That's why Epictetus, born a slave, became one of the freest men in history. His body could be chained, but his mind was untouchable. Here's a secret the Stoics never set out right but lived by. Every manipulator depends on your reaction speed. They want you emotional, fast, impulsive, because impulse is predictable. But calm is confusing. When you slow down your thoughts, when you refuse to respond until you've seen reality clearly, manipulators panic. Their control dissolves. That's why mastering your inner dialogue doesn't just make you peaceful, it makes you dangerous, in the best way. People can't push you, guilt you, or rush you into decisions. You become what Seneca called a citadel of reason, a mind no one can invade. And yet, there's a deeper layer to this mastery. Because once you've learned to control your thoughts, there's still one enemy left: the subtle attachment to things outside your control. You may not react emotionally, you may not crave validation, you may even command your inner voice. But as long as your peace depends on external results, success, comfort, relationships, you're still vulnerable. the Stoics discovered a radical way to end that vulnerability forever. It's not detachment from people or life, but a total redefinition of control itself, one that flips manipulation on its head. And once you understand this next Stoic habit, you'll realize why truly free people are the hardest to manipulate, because they've already let go of what everyone else fears losing.
Habit number 4, the dichotomy of control, the ultimate freedom from manipulation. If there's one principle that separates the manipulated from the masters of life, it's this: knowing what's in your control and what isn't. The Stoics called it dichotomy of control, and it might be the most powerful mental weapon ever created. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but the moment you truly grasp it, you become untouchable. Epictetus began his teachings with these words: "Some things are up to us, and some things are not." That's it. That's the foundation of Stoic power. Because every manipulator, every toxic person, every system that tries to control you, they all rely on your confusion between those two things. They want you to obsess over what's not in your control. How others see you, what they think, how they react, whether they approve. The moment you take that bait, you hand them the keys to your peace. Let me paint a picture. Imagine you're working hard on a project, pouring your energy into it. Then your boss criticizes it unfairly, or someone else takes the credit. You feel anger, frustration, betrayal. That's natural. But here's the Stoic twist. Your reaction is based on wanting to control what isn't yours, their opinion, their behavior. The Stoic response? That's not mine. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "When you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger." The Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man alive, reminded himself daily that even he could not control outcomes. He could control only his effort, his intention, his integrity. Everything else was fate. Now think about how modern manipulation thrives. Social media outrage, political division, even relationship drama. It all feeds on making you believe you should control what others do or think. They want you reacting, arguing, defending. Why? Because when you fight for control you don't have, you neglect the control you do, your mind. The Stoic flips the game. They ask, is this within my power? If yes, act. If no, release. That single mental habit destroys manipulation. Because if you can't be baited into fighting for things you can't control, no one can use your emotions as a weapon. But here's the paradox. Once you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, you actually gain more influence. People sense your calm, your clarity, your detachment from outcome. It unnerves manipulators and attracts leaders. It's the paradox of power. Those who don't crave control over others end up with control over themselves, and therefore control over everything that truly matters. Seneca practiced this during exile, when he lost his status, his home, his freedom. Yet he wrote some of his most profound letters then, saying, "He who has peace within needs nothing from fortune." Imagine that mindset in today's world. Losing your job, your money, your social validation, and still remaining calm, focused, and grateful. That is the dichotomy of control in action. Now, let's go even deeper, because this habit doesn't just shield you from emotional manipulation, it also protects you from the most seductive kind, material manipulation. The kind where companies, trends, and people convince you that happiness depends on what you own. That's the next frontier of Stoic freedom, and it's where the fifth habit begins. It's the art of simplicity, of wanting less, needing less, and therefore being truly untouchable. Because you can't manipulate someone who desires nothing they can't control. And what happens when desire itself becomes a choice, not a chain? That's where the Stoic path turns from strength to serenity, and where we uncover habit number 5, the one that breaks society's biggest illusion. Habit number 5, the power of minimal desire, freedom from material and emotional traps. Imagine for a moment that everything you ever wanted, the car, the relationship, the status, the recognition, suddenly disappeared overnight. Most people would spiral into panic, but a Stoic would smile. Why? Because what can be taken away was never truly theirs to begin with. The Stoics practiced something radical, the art of wanting less, not out of poverty, but out of power. Because the less you need, the less anyone can use against you. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." Think about how many manipulations in life depend on desire. Advertisements promise happiness through things. Influencers sell self-worth through lifestyles. Even people around you subtly use your wants to steer your choices. Do this, and I'll love you. Buy this, and you'll be admired. The moment your happiness depends on getting, you're chained. Marcus Aurelius lived surrounded by unimaginable luxury, palaces, gold, servants, power. Yet he constantly reminded himself that simplicity was freedom. In Meditations, he wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself." That's not minimalism as a trend, it's minimalism as armor. The Stoics trained themselves to detach from comfort so they could never be enslaved by it. Seneca slept on hard floors once a month, even as a wealthy man, whispering to himself, "Is this what I feared?" Why? To remind himself that comfort is an illusion and that resilience is built through voluntary hardship. Epictetus, born a slave, understood this better than anyone. He said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." Now, look at our world. Companies spend billions studying human psychology, not to help us, but to hook us. Every ad, every scroll, every limited offer is designed to awaken desire. But when you step into Stoic simplicity, the game ends. They can't sell you identity if you already know who you are. They can't sell you belonging if you've made peace with solitude. They can't guilt you with comparison if you've trained your mind to see enough in what you already have. This is where minimal desire becomes a superpower. It's not just financial freedom, it's mental sovereignty. When you can look at something beautiful, desirable, or popular and feel no craving, only appreciation, you have become unshakable. Here's the paradox the Stoics discovered. When you stop needing, life starts giving. People chase you, opportunities find you, peace follows you, not because you're lucky, but because your energy is rare. Everyone else radiates lack. You radiate fullness. And manipulators sense that. They can't hook you with promises because you're not chasing rewards. They can't threaten you with loss because you've made peace with impermanence. You become what the modern world secretly fears, a person who can't be bought, pressured, or persuaded by fear or desire. That's the Stoics' quiet rebellion, to walk through chaos, untempted, unmoved, yet deeply alive. But there's one more form of manipulation the Stoics warned about, one that doesn't come from society, possessions, or even people. It's subtler, more dangerous, and it lives within you. It's the manipulation of time, the illusion that tomorrow will always come, that you can delay your discipline, your purpose, your becoming. Seneca called it the greatest waste of life, the act of postponing what matters. And that's exactly where our final Stoic habit begins, the one that shatters procrastination, overthinking, and hesitation forever. Because once you conquer time, you conquered life.
Habit number 6, the urgency of now, mastering time like a Stoic emperor. There's one resource manipulators use better than anyone: your time. They don't always take it directly. They drain it through distraction, guilt, or endless waiting. Think about it. How often have you said, "I'll start tomorrow," or "I'll deal with that later"? Those phrases seem harmless, but Seneca called them the silent assassins of life. In his letter, On the Shortness of Life, he warned, "It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Every moment you spend overthinking, every hour you give to meaningless scrolling, every day you postpone your purpose, that's manipulation in its most invisible form. The world profits when you delay your potential. But the Stoic lives as if every breath could be the last, not with fear, but with focus. Marcus Aurelius understood this more than anyone. He faced plagues, betrayals, and wars, yet he wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." That wasn't morbid, it was liberation. When you accept the fragility of life, manipulation loses its leverage. No one can scare you with loss when you've already made peace with mortality. You stop waiting for someday and start acting now. Imagine waking up tomorrow and treating every task, every conversation, as if it were your last chance to express your best self. The noise fades, petty drama dissolves, urgency becomes clarity. But here's where it gets interesting. Manipulators thrive on your hesitation. They say, "Wait until you're ready," because they know readiness never comes. The Stoic flips that script. Epictetus taught, "How long will you wait before you demand the best of yourself?" He believed procrastination was a form of self-manipulation, your comfort zone whispering lies. You'll start after the show. You'll meditate tomorrow. You'll speak your truth next week. And while you wait, your potential rusts. That's why Stoic time mastery isn't about working faster, it's about living intentionally. To them, every minute not aligned with virtue is theft, not by others, but by your own inattention. Now picture this: a modern Stoic wakes at dawn, not rushing, but grounded. They don't check notifications, they check themselves. They ask, "If today were my last, how would I live it?" That single question burns away triviality. Suddenly, gossip, fear, and regret shrink. The Stoics' calendar becomes sacred, not filled with noise, but meaning. They move slower, but with more purpose. Paradoxically, they get more done because every action is deliberate. You can't manipulate a person like that. They no longer trade time for approval or waste energy on the uncontrollable. Seneca once compared life to a play. It's not the length, but the performance that matters. When you live by that, time becomes your ally, not your captor. And the beauty is, when you stop letting others waste your time, you start inspiring them to protect their own. Your presence becomes sharper, your words heavier, your energy unforgettable. You become the kind of person whose silence feels louder than most people's noise, because you live fully in this exact breath. But there's one more layer to this Stoic armor, the element that binds all 6 habits together. You've learned how to detach emotionally, rise above validation, master your inner dialogue, control only what's yours, want less, and live now. But how do you sustain it? How do you stay stoic in a world that constantly tests you, that drags you back into chaos the moment you find peace? The answer lies in the daily ritual that every Stoic used, from emperor to slave, to reset their mind and reinforce their discipline. It's ancient, powerful, and shockingly practical even today. And once you make it a part of your life, the transformation becomes permanent.
The Stoic Daily Ritual: reprogramming your mind for unshakable control. Imagine waking up tomorrow and your mind feels razor sharp, calm, deliberate, unbothered. You don't scroll, you don't rush, you simply observe. That's not some mystical state reserved for monks. It's the result of a simple Stoic ritual practiced for centuries: morning reflection and nightly review. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, didn't begin his day with strategy meetings or luxuries. He began with writing, not for others, but for himself. His meditations weren't a book, they were reminders. He would write things like, "Today I will meet people who are selfish, ungrateful, arrogant, but I will not be harmed by them." That single act, anticipating life's chaos before it hits, rewired his emotional reactions. It's like psychological armor you put on before battle. The morning reflection is the first half of the ritual. It's not about controlling the day, it's about controlling yourself. The Stoics would visualize the challenges ahead, the rude colleague, the delay, the unexpected failure, and then mentally rehearse their calm response. Seneca called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. It sounds grim, but it's actually empowering. Because when life tests you, you've already seen it in your mind. You've already practiced grace under pressure. So when manipulation comes, the guilt trip, the provocation, the emotional hook, you're not surprised. You're ready. You act. You don't react. And in that moment, the world loses its grip on you. But the real transformation happens in the second half of the ritual, the evening review. When the day ends and silence settles, the Stoics would reflect. What did I do well? What could I have done better? Where did I lose control? This wasn't self-criticism, it was self-awareness. Epictetus told his students to sit alone and examine your soul. He believed each night was a mirror, a chance to meet your true self without illusion. Marcus would look back and remind himself that failure wasn't shameful, only unconsciousness was. If he had been impatient, he noted it. If he'd acted with wisdom, he reinforced it. Each night was a quiet workshop of character, an invisible training ground for resilience. Now, imagine combining that ancient practice with modern life. You wake up and journal not about goals, but about who you want to be today. You visualize chaos, but promise composure. You go through your day, grounded and clear. At night, you write, not on your phone, but on paper, the lessons, the moments you caught yourself, the ones you missed. Slowly, you start seeing patterns. You stop reacting automatically. You start choosing consciously. Within weeks, your inner dialogue changes tone, from anxious to calm, from judgmental to curious. You begin to sense that the world hasn't become easier, you've become stronger. This ritual is the glue that binds all Stoic habits. Without it, discipline fades. With it, mastery compounds. Marcus used it to remain moral in power. Seneca used it to stay peaceful in exile. Epictetus used it to stay free in slavery. It's the daily recalibration of the mind, like sharpening a sword that never dulls. And when you live this way, something unexpected happens. You start influencing others without trying. Your calm becomes contagious. People sense your steadiness and feel safe near you. You stop being easily manipulated and start becoming a quiet force that uplifts or unsettles, depending on who stands before you. But that power comes with a challenge. The more grounded you become, the more the world will test you, with chaos, with envy, with temptation. And this next part of the Stoic journey is where the real battle begins, not against others, but against your own ego. Because even Stoic strength can be corrupted if you let pride sneak in. The next lesson Marcus Aurelius left us is perhaps the most humbling and the one that will keep your power pure, no matter how high you rise.
Conquering the ego, the hidden enemy of Stoic strength. There's a silent danger that grows with every ounce of power, discipline, and control you gain. The danger of ego. It's subtle. It disguises itself as confidence, as righteousness, even as Stoicism itself. You start feeling proud of your calm, superior in your discipline,
detached from the chaos of others. But that's the exact moment the Stoics would warn. Be careful, you're being manipulated again by your own success. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, ruler of millions, wrote to himself daily, "Do not be Caesarified." He meant, don't let the crown make you forget your humanity. Think about that. The most powerful man on earth reminding himself to stay humble. That's not weakness. That's supreme awareness. Because the greatest manipulator isn't outside of you. It's the part of your mind that whispers, "You're better than them." Ego is a shapeshifter. It doesn't only crave praise. Sometimes it feeds on pain. It says, "Look how much I suffer, how much I've endured." Both pride and victimhood are its disguises. Seneca said, "He who indulges in empty glory, who values the applause of men, has placed himself in bondage." The ego thrives on comparison. I'm calmer than them. I'm wiser. I've mastered Stoicism. But the Stoics knew that the moment you compare, you've lost. You're still measuring your worth by others, and that's just another form of manipulation. Epictetus warned his students, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. True Stoics didn't seek to appear wise. They sought to become wise. They didn't crave the title of philosopher. They lived philosophy in silence. Imagine a modern example. You've been working on yourself, meditating, reading, journaling, cutting negativity. You feel great. Then someone mocks you, says, "You've changed." Your ego stirs. "They just don't understand me." But the Stoic inside you smiles. Not in arrogance, but in awareness. You remind yourself, I am not my image, I am my actions. That's humility in motion. Marcus practiced it by writing reminders like, when you wake up, remind yourself, today I will meet people who are ignorant, ungrateful, and deceitful. But they act that way out of ignorance of good and evil. He didn't say this to look down on them, but to cultivate compassion. He understood that ego divides, humility connects. Here's what the modern Stoic understands. Ego makes you reactive, and reactivity makes you manipulable. When someone attacks your pride, you defend. When someone flatters it, you inflate. Either way, they control you. But when you dissolve ego, when you stop needing to be right, superior, or understood, you become untouchable. Imagine walking through life where praise doesn't excite you, insults don't sting, and misunderstanding doesn't bother you. That's not numbness. That's mastery. That's what Seneca meant when he said, "He who conquers himself is the mightiest warrior." But there's an even deeper truth here. Humility isn't the absence of power. It's the proper use of it. Marcus Aurelius wielded armies, yet wrote prayers for patience. Seneca advised emperors, yet spoke of the wisdom of servants. Epictetus taught kings, yet owned nothing. Their humility didn't shrink them. It expanded them beyond ego's cage. And here's the twist. Once you conquer your ego, your influence multiplies. People trust you more because your calm no longer hides pride, it radiates authenticity. You stop needing control over others because you already control yourself. And yet, the Stoics faced one final challenge. Not ego, not desire, not fear, but chaos itself. Because even the calmest mind can be shaken when life strikes hardest. Loss, betrayal, death, uncertainty. How do you remain unmanipulated by fate itself? How do you keep serenity when the universe takes what you love? That's the final and most sacred Stoic lesson. The philosophy of acceptance. The calm embrace of everything as it is. And that's where our journey leads next, into the heart of Stoicism itself. Amor fati, the love of fate.
Amor fati, turning chaos into power.
What if every heartbreak, every failure, every betrayal was not a curse, but a command from the universe telling you to grow? Most people resist what happens to them. The Stoic embraces it. Amor fati means love of fate, but to live it is to do something almost supernatural, to look directly at suffering and say, I choose this too. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily as emperor, when plagues swept through Rome, when generals betrayed him, when his own body ached from illness. Yet he wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything thrown into it." That's the essence of amor fati. Whatever life throws at you, loss, rejection, injustice, becomes fuel. Nothing is wasted. The fire does not complain about what it consumes, it transforms it. Now picture your own life through that lens. The job you didn't get? Training in patience. The relationship that ended? Practice in self-respect. The betrayal? A lesson in discernment. The Stoics didn't deny pain, they transcended it by assigning it meaning. Seneca said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Epictetus went even further. "Do not seek for things to happen as you wish, but wish for things to happen as they do." When you do that, manipulation dies instantly because no one can use adversity to control you. They can't make you fear loss because you've made peace with it. They can't use guilt because you see purpose in pain. You stop resisting life and start partnering with it. In modern life, this is revolutionary. The world tells you happiness is the absence of discomfort. Stoicism says it's the mastery of it. Imagine going through a crisis, a breakup, a failure, a public humiliation, and instead of asking, "Why me?" you ask, "How is this shaping me?" That single question changes everything. The pain doesn't vanish, but it transforms from an enemy into an ally. Every hardship becomes part of your story of strength. And manipulators, who rely on your fear of discomfort, lose their power. You become unpredictable, unstoppable, because you no longer seek to avoid suffering, you use it. Marcus once wrote that everything in the universe is woven together, that even tragedy serves the whole. When you live by amor fati, you stop labeling events as good or bad. They simply are. You see the bigger pattern, and that clarity gives you serenity. You become like the ocean. Storms may disturb the surface, but the depths remain calm. Modern psychology calls this radical acceptance. Stoicism called it wisdom. And it's not passive. Loving fate doesn't mean you don't act. It means you act without resentment. You fix what you can, you release what you can't, and you trust that every outcome carries its own hidden benefit. But there's a deeper mystery here, one the Stoics hinted at but rarely explained. When you truly love fate, something strange happens. Fear dissolves. Fear of failure, fear of loss, even fear of death. Because if you can love whatever happens, then nothing can be taken from you. That's the ultimate invincibility, not having control, but needing none. And yet there's still one piece missing, the bridge between Stoic calm and human connection. Because while Stoicism teaches self-mastery, it also whispers a final paradox, that the truly unmanipulable person is not cold or distant, but deeply compassionate. The next part of our journey reveals why, and how compassion, not indifference, becomes the Stoics' greatest strength.
Compassion without attachment, the Stoics' hidden strength. People often mistake Stoicism for emotional coldness, as if the Stoic walks through life untouched, indifferent, heartless. But that's a misunderstanding. True Stoicism is not about caring less, it's about caring rightly. The Stoics loved deeply, but with clarity. They gave freely, but without expectation. They helped others, but without losing themselves. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the most powerful man alive in his time, wrote, "We are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids." Imagine that, the Emperor of Rome reminding himself daily that his power meant nothing if it didn't serve the whole. Compassion, to the Stoic, was not sentimentality, it was wisdom in motion. The difference lies in attachment. Most people love with conditions. I'll care for you if you care for me. I'll be kind as long as you're kind. But that's just emotional bargaining, and manipulators thrive on it. They exploit your need for validation, your craving to be seen as good. The Stoic cuts that chain. He loves because it's right, not because it's reciprocated. Seneca wrote, "He who benefits others for his own sake has not given, he has bargained." That line exposes the heart of Stoic compassion. It's not transactional. It's a decision to remain virtuous regardless of the world's response. That's why no one can emotionally blackmail a true Stoic. They've removed the hook. They can give affection without becoming enslaved by it. Picture this. You're in a relationship and someone withdraws affection to manipulate you. Most people panic. They chase, they plead, they compromise their values. But a Stoic pauses. They feel the sting, they acknowledge it, and then they ask, is my peace dependent on their approval? The answer is no. They choose to act with dignity, not desperation. And here's the paradox. That quiet strength often reverses the manipulation entirely. The one trying to control loses control, because power only works when you need something from the other person. The Stoic's love, detached from need, becomes unbreakable. This same principle applies to leadership, friendship, even strangers. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal after betrayal, friends who turned enemies, senators who plotted against him, yet he refused to let bitterness corrode his character. He wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." That's Stoic compassion, not weakness, but refusal to be corrupted. Epictetus taught that when others act unjustly, it's not malice, but ignorance. They're lost in passion, enslaved by their emotions. When you see it that way, judgment transforms into empathy. You can be firm without hatred, assertive without cruelty. You become emotionally precise, strong yet kind. Modern science echoes this ancient wisdom. Studies on emotional intelligence show that compassion grounded in self-control increases influence, trust, and peace. When your emotions aren't hijacked, you respond from principle, not impulse. People sense it. Your energy shifts. You become someone they can't manipulate because your compassion isn't a weakness. It's a superpower. You forgive, but you don't forget your boundaries. You give, but you don't sacrifice your dignity. You listen, but you don't absorb their chaos. That balance, empathy without enmeshment, is the mark of a true Stoic. And yet, there's one more layer, the hardest of all. Because while Stoic compassion frees you from others' control, there's still one master that quietly rules most people: time. The anxiety of the future, the regret of the past, the rush of the present. These are the final chains that bind the mind. Marcus called time a river, sweeping everything away. The next lesson is about stepping out of that current entirely, learning the Stoic art of presence, not running ahead, not looking back, but standing powerfully still in the moment where all strength exists. That is where manipulation ends completely, when you are finally free from time itself. The Stoic art of presence, freedom from time and fear. Imagine this. You're walking down a quiet street, and your mind is in 3 places at once. You're regretting what you said yesterday. You're worrying about what you'll say tomorrow.
And in doing so, you miss the sunlight on your face, the breeze on your skin, the life happening right now. That's how most people live. Ghosts haunted by the past, prisoners of the future. But the Stoic, he lives here. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." He didn't mean ignore your past or stop planning. He meant stop being enslaved by time. Because manipulation often hides in memory and imagination. Guilt chains you to what's gone. Fear enslaves you to what hasn't happened. Both keep you from the only place where power truly exists, the present moment. Epictetus said, "It is not things that disturb us, but our opinions about them." And most of those opinions are echoes, replayed from yesterday or projected onto tomorrow. The Stoic learns to interrupt that loop. He breathes, observes, and says, "This is what's happening, nothing more." Imagine that level of mental clarity. You lose your job, but instead of spiraling into panic about the future, you simply see a fact. My employment ended today. Not my life is over, not I'll never succeed, just reality, clean, objective, calm. That gap between event and interpretation is the birthplace of freedom. That's where manipulation dies, because manipulators depend on your unawareness of that gap. They need you reactive, caught in emotional time travel. When you anchor yourself in presence, their hooks can't find purchase. Seneca described time as our most precious possession, yet the one we squander most freely. He said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Modern life magnifies that truth. Endless notifications, constant comparison, digital noise pulling your mind in every direction but now. To live stoically in this age is to rebel against distraction, to reclaim focus as a sacred act. Each moment you're truly present, you're untouchable, not because you escape reality, but because you inhabit it fully. You can't be manipulated by what doesn't exist, and the past and future don't. Only now breathes. There's a scene I want you to imagine. A storm hits. Everyone runs for shelter, shouting, predicting, panicking, and in the middle stands one person, still, centered, watching the rain fall. That's the Stoic state. Not ignorance, but intimacy with what is. The mind slows, the noise fades. You realize that control isn't about bending time or outcomes. It's about meeting the moment with mastery. In that stillness, fear dissolves, because fear lives in anticipation. Guilt lives in memory. Peace lives in presence. Modern neuroscience now confirms what Marcus, Seneca, and Epictetus intuited 2,000 years ago. When you focus on the present, the brain's fear circuitry quiets. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of wisdom and reason, takes the reins. Presence is not just spiritual, it's neurological self-command. It's you telling your mind, return to where power lives. That's why Stoicism aligns perfectly with mindfulness, though it's older by centuries. The Stoic doesn't chase serenity. He returns to it again and again by choosing to be here. But there's an even greater revelation waiting beyond presence, one the Stoics hinted at, but few fully grasped. When you master the present, you don't just become peaceful, you become purposeful. Every action starts aligning with your highest principles. Every word becomes deliberate. You start living, not existing. And that's the next stage, where presence transforms into purpose. The Stoics' ultimate goal is not just calm, it's contribution. To take their clarity and use it to shape the world with virtue, courage, and meaning. That is the final ascent, and that's where we're headed next.
The power of purpose, living like a Stoic in the modern world. Once you've trained your mind to remain calm, detached, and present, the next question arises, what now? What's the point of all this control if it doesn't lead somewhere greater? The ancient Stoics were clear. Discipline without direction becomes emptiness. Stoicism was never about building walls around your heart. It was about channeling your energy towards something worthy. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet his private writings weren't about conquest. They were about service. He wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." That's the Stoic call to action, to take everything you've learned about control, humility, and presence and use it to make the world around you better. In today's world, this message is revolutionary. We live in an age where distractions have replaced direction and busyness masquerades as purpose. People chase goals they don't believe in, working jobs they secretly resent, trying to please people they don't respect. And when that emptiness sets in, manipulation finds its way back in, through advertising, validation seeking, and emotional exhaustion. The Stoic, however, stands apart. He chooses purpose over noise. He asks, what is mine to do? Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. That's not motivation, that's identity. It's a declaration of authorship over your own life. When you live with purpose, your energy sharpens. You stop saying yes to everything that flatters you. You stop being seduced by instant rewards, because purpose gives you a compass, a North Star. The Stoics believed virtue was that compass. Courage, wisdom, justice, temperance. Not moral dogma, but practical alignment. Every decision filtered through those four lenses. Is it wise? Is it just? Is it courageous? Is it moderate? Imagine applying that in your daily life, before reacting, before buying, before speaking. That's what made Stoics impossible to manipulate. Their values weren't situational, they were foundational. And here's what's wild. The more you live by principle, the more magnetic you become. Not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because integrity is rare, and the world senses it. People feel drawn to someone who moves with quiet certainty, who doesn't chase approval, who stands firm in chaos. That's why Stoicism isn't just self-help, it's leadership training. Seneca called it a discipline for those who would command themselves before commanding others. Every Stoic, knowingly or not, becomes a leader, not by position, but by example. Let me paint a scene. A Stoic in the modern world wakes early, not to impress, but to align. They journal their intentions. They train their body, not for vanity, but vitality. They go to work, not seeking recognition, but excellence. They face conflict, not with anger, but with clarity. They return home, not to escape the world, but to reflect on how they served it. Day by day, they build a quiet legacy. No hashtags, no applause, just mastery. And yet, ironically, that's exactly the kind of person who ends up inspiring millions. Because authenticity always echoes further than performance. But the Stoics knew that even purpose could be corrupted if it turns into pride or pressure. That's why they added a final reminder, memento mori, remember death. Not to frighten, but to focus. When you remember your impermanence, every action sharpens, every moment deepens. Purpose becomes pure, stripped of ego, anchored in truth.
The Stoic doesn't chase immortality. They live so fully that death itself loses meaning. And that takes us to the final transformation, the ultimate Stoic habit that seals all others together, the acceptance of mortality. Because once you stop fearing death, you stop fearing life. You stop being manipulated by time, people, outcomes, by anything. You become absolutely free. That final mastery is where we go next, the Stoics' ultimate liberation, memento mori, the freedom of remembering you will die.
Memento mori, the freedom of remembering you will die. Imagine you're holding an hourglass. Grains of sand fall steadily, soft, silent, unstoppable. You try turning it over, but the sand doesn't care. That's time. That's life. The Stoics understood this truth with painful clarity. We are temporary guests in an indifferent universe. Yet, instead of despairing, they found liberation in that realization. Memento mori, remember that you must die. It sounds morbid to the modern ear, but to Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, it was the key to living fully. Marcus wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." Think about that, not as a threat, but as an invitation. When you remember death, trivial things dissolve. Gossip loses weight. Envy looks absurd. Fear becomes irrelevant. You start asking, if this were my last day, would I still waste it worrying about what others think? Seneca called life a loan, not a possession. You act like mortals in all that you fear and like immortals in all that you desire. That one line cuts to the core of human folly. We fear death as if it's unnatural, yet we live as if we'll never die. The Stoic reverses that. He accepts death as natural, inevitable, even beautiful. Because what gives value to life is its fragility. If you were immortal, every moment would lose meaning. But because you're not, every conversation, every sunrise, every breath becomes sacred. Memento mori isn't about gloom, it's about urgency. It wakes you up from sleepwalking. It tears away illusion and leaves only truth, that you are alive now. And that's enough reason to live fiercely and wisely. Epictetus reminded his students not to cling to what was never theirs. He said, when you kiss your child, say to yourself, tomorrow he may die. Harsh? Maybe. But he didn't mean to suppress love. He meant to deepen it. To love fully because it could end. When you remember impermanence, gratitude floods in. You stop expecting perfection from people. You forgive faster. You waste less time on pride. You stop waiting for the right moment to start that project, to speak your truth, to change your life, because you realize this is the right moment, the only one you'll ever truly have. Modern culture hides death behind noise, endless distractions, youth obsessions, digital immortality. But the Stoic faces it head-on. Why? Because when you stop fearing death, no one can manipulate you with threats, loss, or time. The marketer who says, act now or miss out? Powerless. The boss who rules through fear? Meaningless. The critic who mocks you? Irrelevant. When death loses its sting, life becomes radiant. Seneca put it beautifully. He who learns how to die has unlearned how to be a slave. Visualize this. Marcus Aurelius, riding by lamplight, weary from war, aware that his life could end any day, yet calm. No panic, no rage, just presence, just purpose. He'd already made peace with fate. That's why he could rule justly, forgive freely, and act decisively. His secret wasn't power, it was perspective. He lived ready. That's memento mori. It's not about preparing for death, it's about preparing for life, real, honest, unfiltered life.
And now we arrive at the final lesson, the summit of Stoic mastery, where all the habits we've explored converge: emotional control, presence, humility, compassion, and acceptance. Because once you've faced death, something extraordinary happens. You stop merely surviving and start living deliberately. You stop reacting to the world and start creating your world. The next and final part will show exactly how to embody this, how to walk through life like a modern Stoic, free, grounded, unmanipulatable, and fiercely alive.
The modern Stoic, living untouchable, free, and fully alive. Picture this. You wake before dawn. The world is silent, the air still. You sit with your thoughts. No phone, no noise, just breath. You remember what you've learned. Control what you can, accept what you can't. You remember the fragility of time. Every sunrise is a gift you didn't earn. You recall Marcus's words, "Do every act of your life as though it were your last." That line isn't poetry, it's instruction. The modern Stoic doesn't chase eternity, he uses the moment. He's not emotionless, he's emotionally literate. He feels anger, but chooses restraint. He feels sadness, but practices gratitude. He feels fear, but moves forward anyway. That's not detachment. That's dominance of the self. You see, Stoicism isn't about escaping life. It's about engaging it completely, but on your terms. In a world designed to manipulate your emotions, your attention, your worth, Stoicism is rebellion. When others scroll, you reflect. When others react, you respond. When others rush, you remain. You stop living as prey to circumstance and start living as a conscious creator. Every hardship becomes a teacher. Every insult, a mirror. Every challenge, a forge. This mindset doesn't make you perfect, it makes you prepared. Because the modern Stoic knows that the goal isn't comfort, it's character. Comfort fades, character compounds. Seneca said, "Life is long if you know how to use it." The Stoic knows. They use each day not for noise, but for depth. They choose truth over popularity, discipline over pleasure, impact over image. They don't need validation because they live in alignment. Their worth isn't measured in followers, money, or applause, but in integrity. And ironically, that authenticity draws people in. The world cannot resist someone who stands firm when everyone else bends. That's why Stoics become quietly magnetic. Their peace feels like power, because it is. Imagine living that way, walking into chaos with a calm that unnerves manipulators, a presence that steadies the anxious, and a wisdom that lifts those around you. You're no longer controlled by others' moods or opinions. You don't chase, you attract. You don't beg, you choose. You don't react, you create. Your silence speaks louder than noise. Your calm provokes curiosity. People start asking, what makes you different? And your answer isn't arrogance, it's peace. You've learned to master the only empire that truly matters, yourself. Marcus Aurelius ruled millions, but wrote daily reminders to stay humble. Seneca was one of the richest men in Rome, yet preached simplicity. Epictetus was a slave who became free in spirit long before his chains broke. These men lived at opposite ends of society, yet they shared the same victory, mastery of the self. That's the crown Stoicism offers. Not wealth, not fame, not control, but freedom. Freedom from manipulation, from anxiety, from ego, from fear. The Stoic doesn't escape the world. He moves through it like a storm that cannot be shaken. And as this journey ends, one truth remains. Stoicism is not a philosophy to know, but one to live.
Every morning, reflect. Every night, review. Every moment, practice. Because wisdom fades without repetition. The Stoics weren't superhuman. They were simply consistent. They failed, learned, and began again. Calmly, deliberately, endlessly. So the next time life tries to manipulate you, with fear, guilt, chaos, or noise, pause. Breathe. Remember, you've trained for this. You are no longer a victim of emotion, but the architect of it. That's what it means to be a modern Stoic. Not untouched by life, but transformed by it. To live with open eyes, open heart, unshakable peace. To love fate, conquer ego, and meet every day as a warrior of the mind. And when your time comes, you'll leave this world the way you lived in it, calm, courageous, free. Because the Stoic doesn't seek immortality through legacy, he achieves it through presence.